American farang in his early 30s, minus a penis, and a lot of blood from a huge knife wound that began in his lower gut and finished just short of his rib cage. Chanya, a basically decent and very tidy Thai, had placed his penis on the bedside table. At the other end of the table, a single rose stood in a plastic mug of water. There was nothing for it but to secure the room for the purposes of forensic investigation, leave a hefty bribe for the hotel receptionist, who was now more or less obliged to say whatever I tell him to say, standard procedure under my Colonel Vicorn in District 8, and await further orders. Vicorn, of course, was in one of his clubs, carousing, probably surrounded by naked young women who adored him or knew how to look as if they did, and in no mood to be dragged to the scene of a crime until I penetrated his drunken skull enough to explain that the business at hand was not an investigation per se, but the infinitely more challenging forensic task so lightly spoken of as a cover-up. Even then he showed no inclination to shift himself until he realized it was Chanya, the perp, not the victim. "Where the hell did she get the opium?" my mother wants to know. "There hasn't been opium in Bangkok since I was a teenager." I know from her eyes that she is thinking fondly of the Vietnam War, when she was herself a working girl in Bangkok, and a lot of the GIs brought small balls of opium from the war zone, one of them being my almost anonymous father, of whom more later. An opiated man is more or less impotent, which reduces much of the wear and tear on a professional's assets, and not inclined to argue about fee structure. Nong and her colleagues had always shown special interest in any American serviceman who whispered that he had a little opium back in his hotel. Being devout Buddhists, of course, the girls never used the stuff themselves, but they encouraged the John to get stoned out of his tree, whereupon they would extract exactly the agreed fee from his wallet, plus a tip somewhat on the generous side to reflect the risk inherent in associating with drug abusers, plus taxi fare, and return to work. Integrity has always been a master word for Nong, which is why she is so upset about Chanya. We both know the Colonel is arriving in his limo because his damned signature tune, The Ride of the Valkyries, is booming from the stereo as his car approaches. I go to the entrance and watch while his driver opens the rear door and more or less pulls him out. A beautiful cashmere Xenia sports jacket, fawn-colored and somewhat crumpled, pants by Eddie Manetti on the Via Condotti in Rome, and his usual Wayfarer wraparound sunglasses. The driver staggers toward me with Vicorn's arm over his shoulder. "It's fucking Saturday fucking night," the driver complains with a glare, as if it's all my fault. We prefer not to investigate even capital crimes on Saturday nights in District 8. The Buddhist path can be much like the Christian, in that the karma of others often seems to get dumped on your shoulders from out of nowhere. "I know," I tell him as I make way to let him pass, and Vicorn, sunglasses now thrust fashionably onto his hairline, though slightly askew, also glares at me blearily. There are padded benches in intimate little booths along the back wall of the club, and the driver dumps Vicorn down in one while I get some mineral water from the fridge and hand it to my Colonel, who empties the bottle in a few swigs. It is with relief that I observe the rodent cunning return to those frank, unblinking eyes. I tell him the story again, with a few commercially focused interjections from my mother. "She makes more for us in a month than all the other girls put together." And I see that he already has a plan to maximize wriggle room, should things get difficult. Within 10 minutes, he is close to sober, tells his driver to disappear with the limo. He doesn't want to broadcast that he is here, and is staring at me. "So let's go up and take her statement. Get an ink pad and some A4 paper." I find the ink pad that we use for our business stamp, the Old Man's Club, rods of iron, and some sheets of paper from the fax machine which Nong installed for those few of our overseas clients who don't have email. We tried for hooker.com and similar domain names, but they had all been taken, including oldman.com. Whore.org had of course been taken since the dawn of cyberspace, so we had to make do with omcroy.com and follow him across the bar. He stares at Chanya's dress on the stool and cocks an eye at me. Versace. Fake or real? Gingerly I hold it up, hefting the weight of the blood it has absorbed. Unclear. He grunts, much as Maigret used to do, as if absorbing a clue too subtle for my understanding, and we continue up the stairs, passing the bra without comment. I pick up the panties on the floor outside the room, almost weightless and apparently innocent of bloodstains. They are more a cash sex than a proper undergarment, with the rear panel no more than a bootlace that divides the buttocks. I hang them over a stray electrical cable for now. Chanya was too stoned to lock the door, and when we enter, she blesses us with a rapturous smile from that awesomely beautiful mouth before returning to whichever of the Buddha heavens she has escaped to. She is quite naked, stretched out on the bed with her legs akimbo, her full, firm breasts pointing at the ceiling. An exquisite blue dolphin is jumping over her left nipple, her long hair shining like a fresh black brushstroke on the white pillow. She has shaved her pubic hair save for the subtlest filigree black line, which seems to point to her clitoris, perhaps as a road sign for drunk and fumbling farang. The opium pipe, a classic of about 3 feet of bamboo with the bowl 2/3 of the way down, lies beside her. The colonel sniffs and smiles. As with my mother, the sweet aroma of burned poppy sap holds fond memories for him, though of a radically different order. He used to trade it up in Laos in the golden years of the B-52s. The room is tiny, and hardly big enough for the 3 of us, when I bring 2 chairs and set them on opposite sides of the bed. The sex goddess between us begins to snore, while Vicorn dictates her statement. The farang had been drinking even before he came into my club. He called me over to join him at his table and offered to buy me a drink. I accepted a Coca-Cola while he drank, nearly a full bottle of Mekong whiskey. He did not seem to be able to take alcohol very well and seemed confused and disoriented. When he offered to pay my bar fine and take me back to his hotel, I told him he was too drunk, but he insisted, and my papasan, one Sonchai Jitpleecheep, asked me as a special favor to go with the farang, who was very big and muscular and seemed likely to cause trouble if I didn't. Thanks, I say. He struck me as a man with many problems and talked rather abusively about women, especially American women, whom he called cunts. I think perhaps he had had a relationship that had gone badly wrong, and that left him with very strong feelings of bitterness toward all women, even though he claimed to like Asian women, who he said were much kinder and gentler than farang women and more womanly. When we reached his room, I suggested to him that he was perhaps too drunk to make love, and that it would be better if I went back to my club. I even offered to give him back my bar fine, but he grew angry and said he could fuck all night and pushed me into the room. He ordered me to undress, and I did so. I was now quite frightened because I had seen a large knife. Do we have the murder weapon? A large knife, as a matter of fact. Looks like a military thing, solid steel with about a 12-inch blade. I left it in the hotel room for now. An enormous military-type weapon lying on a bedside table. He started to tell me what he would do to my body if I didn't gratify his desires. He stripped naked and threw me on the bed, but he seemed unable to get an erection. He started to masturbate to make himself big, then made me turn over onto my front. It was then I realized that he intended to sodomize me. I begged him not to, because I never do that sort of thing, and his member now was so big I was sure he would injure me. Still he insisted, without using a condom or a lubricant, and the pain was so great I started to scream. He became very angry and grabbed a pillow to try to stifle my screams, whereupon I